Slowly, I began to try. Small moments of acknowledgement without criticism, soft whispers of gratitude for the way my body carries life, for the way it endures, adapts, and surprises me. I began to frame pregnancy not as destruction, but as transformation. Every ache, every stretch, every change became a reminder of resilience rather than a signal of imperfection. My breasts, once a source of shame and self-consciousness, were no longer just small or uneven, they were alive, learning, growing in preparation for nurturing. I began to see softness not as weakness, but as power. The curves and folds that I had tried to hide became symbols of survival, of endurance, of life unfolding within me. Reclaiming my body also meant reclaiming my perspective. I began to notice moments of awe where I once only saw flaws. I felt the flutter of life inside my womb and marveled at how my body could harbor and sustain another being. I touched my breasts and noticed their responsiveness, their vitality, the gentle strength beneath the skin. I dressed myself with care, choosing garments that honored the shape I had rather than hiding it. And in those choices, I felt a quiet assertion of ownership. This reclamation is neither perfect nor instantaneous. Some days, shame creeps in again, and old insecurities demand attention. My reflections still sometimes feels foreign, my breasts still sometimes seem inadequate. My body still occasionally whispers that I am unworthy, but even in these moments, there is progress. I have learned to acknowledge these thoughts without surrendering to them. I have learned that softness can coexist with strength, that vulnerability can coexist with courage, and that beauty is not only in perfection, but in survival, endurance, and adaptation. I am slowly learning to speak to my body as a companion rather than an adversary. I whisper thanks instead of criticism. I marvel at its capacity to transform and adapt instead of cataloging every perceived flaw. I am discovering power in softness, tenderness in curves, and beauty in survival. Pregnancy has demanded that I confront my insecurities, but it has also gifted me the chance to reclaim my body with intention, compassion, and awe. And perhaps most importantly, I am beginning to see my breasts differently, not as small, inadequate objects of shame, but as vital, responsive, resilient parts of me. They are not failures to be hidden, but living tissue that carries life and adapts with wisdom my mind cannot fully comprehend. Through this slow reclamation, I begin to experience a new intimacy with myself, a fragile, tender, but real acceptance that my body, in all its imperfection, is worthy of attention, care, and even admiration. Reclaiming my body is not an end, but a journey that moves through fear, grief, self-consciousness, and uncertainty, and arrives, sometimes fleetingly, at awe, tenderness, and quiet empowerment. Pregnancy has demanded that I surrender to change, but in that surrender, I am learning that I can also reclaim myself slowly, gently, and fully. Reclaiming my body has been a delicate, painstaking process, far from linear, filled with hesitation, setbacks, and small, almost imperceptible victories. For so long, I had spoken to my body with criticism, a litany of harsh judgments that focused on what I lacked, on the perceived failures of my breasts, my curves, my softness. Pregnancy demanded a confrontation I could no longer avoid. My body was changing in undeniable ways, becoming larger, more sensitive, more alive. And yet, I had to learn to stop seeing these changes as betrayals and begin learning to see them as transformations. Gentleness with myself was not immediate. The mirror remained my enemy at first, reflecting a chest I had always scorned, small, uneven, sensitive, and a belly that grew in ways both foreign and frightening. I would flinch at the sight of it, avert my gaze, and whisper complaints under my breath. But slowly, day by day, I tried a different approach. I started noticing the softness of my skin without judgment, feeling the swell of my breasts and the gentle pulse of life within me, and allowing a quiet acknowledgement, "You are doing your job. You are not failing." The transformation of my body demanded a reframing of my own perspective. Pregnancy was not destruction, as my fear had long insisted. It was creation, adaptation, evolution. My breasts, once a source of relentless insecurity, were teaching me a new language, a language of responsiveness, nourishment, and resilience. Their smallness was no longer evidence of inadequacy, it was evidence of adaptability, of a body learning to carry, to sustain, to provide. Softness was no longer weakness. Curves and folds were not failures, they were proof of survival, of endurance, and the miraculous complexity of life itself. I began to reclaim control not by forcing perfection, but by choosing intentional care. I dressed myself differently, selecting clothes that honored my shape rather than hiding it. I lingered in mirrors, studying the subtleties of my body rather than cataloging flaws. I touched my breasts with awe rather than criticism, feeling their responsiveness, their warmth, their capacity to create and nurture. Each small act became a quiet declaration, "I belong in this body. I am allowed to inhabit it fully." Reclaiming my body has been slow because old insecurities remain. I still flinch at reflections, I still feel pangs of shame when my breasts swell or ache, when my belly stretches and moves in ways I cannot control. But even these moments are part of the reclamation. By noticing shame without surrendering to it, I am teaching myself resilience. I am learning that softness can coexist with strength, that vulnerability can coexist with courage, and that beauty is not only in perfection, but in survival, endurance, and adaptation. I am slowly learning to speak to my body as a companion rather than an adversary. I whisper thanks instead of criticism. I marvel at its capacity to transform and adapt instead of cataloging every perceived flaw. I am discovering power in softness, tenderness in curves, and beauty in survival. Pregnancy has demanded that I confront my insecurities, but it has also gifted me the chance to reclaim my body with intention, compassion, and awe. And perhaps most importantly, I am beginning to see my breasts differently, not as small, inadequate objects of shame, but as vital, responsive, resilient parts of me. They are not failures to be hidden, but living tissue that carries life and adapts with wisdom my mind cannot fully comprehend. Through this slow reclamation, I begin to experience a new intimacy with myself, a fragile, tender, but real acceptance that my body, in all its imperfection, is worthy of attention, care, and even admiration. Reclaiming my body is not an end, but a journey that moves through fear, grief, self-consciousness, and uncertainty, and arrives, sometimes fleetingly, at awe, tenderness, and quiet empowerment. Pregnancy has demanded that I surrender to change, but in that surrender, I am learning that I can also reclaim myself slowly, gently, and fully. Reclaiming my body has been a delicate, painstaking process, far from linear, filled with hesitation, setbacks, and small, almost imperceptible victories. For so long, I had spoken to my body with criticism, a litany of harsh judgments that focused on what I lacked, on the perceived failures of my breasts,
For years, I believed that womanhood demanded perfection. I believed that my body, my breasts, my curves, my softness, all of it, had to align with some invisible standard in order to be worthy, desirable, loved. I watched other women, envied them quietly, compared myself endlessly, and felt the sting of inadequacy prick my heart daily. Pregnancy forced me to confront a truth I had long avoided, that my body, fragile and imperfect as I perceived it, was not failing me. It was transforming me. Transformation, however, is never gentle. It begins with vulnerability. For me, that meant confronting my breasts, small, uneven, sensitive, the parts of me I had scrutinized, hidden, and scorned. It meant standing in the mirror, touching my body, feeling the swell of life within me, and daring to say, "You are enough. You are doing something extraordinary." This act of acknowledgement, small though it was, marked the first step in rewriting my story. I began to realize that womanhood is not about meeting impossible ideals. It is about presence, being present in your body, in your life, in the moment. Motherhood does not demand perfection. It demands vulnerability, courage, and attentiveness. The stretch of my skin, the changes in my breasts, the heaviness in my belly, they are not failures. They are evidence that my body can carry life, sustain life, and transform in ways that are nothing short of miraculous. I am witnessing power in softness, strength in curves, and beauty in imperfection. With each passing day, I noticed subtle shifts. I no longer flinch at my reflection, though shame still visits occasionally. I speak to my body with gentleness rather than judgment, offering gratitude where there once was criticism. I marvel at the intelligence in my breasts, the way they adapt and respond, the way they will nurture the life I carry. I feel a tentative pride in my softness, my capacity to endure, and my ability to give life even when my mind has long doubted it. Becoming a mother is, in a way, the ultimate reclamation of self. It teaches that fragility does not equate to weakness, that vulnerability can be a source of strength, and that presence, truly being present in your body and your life, is more valuable than any idealized standard of perfection. I see now that I do not need flawless curves, perfectly symmetrical breasts, or a body sculpted to the gaze of the world. I need only to inhabit this body fully, tenderly, attentively, and with courage. In this new story of womanhood, fear no longer dictates my identity. Insecurity no longer defines my worth. I am learning to become someone who is tender yet resilient, aware of flaws yet attentive to strengths, present in my body yet unafraid of its changes. My breasts, once a source of shame, now symbolize adaptability, resilience, and life-giving power. My softness is strength, my vulnerability is courage, and my imperfect body is a vessel of awe. This journey from fragile to fierce, from insecure to becoming, is ongoing. There are moments when self-doubt returns, when old comparisons creep back into my thoughts, when I question whether I am enough. But these moments are now met with awareness and compassion rather than despair. I am learning to stand in my body, to honor it, and to witness its brilliance without demanding perfection. I am learning that motherhood, like womanhood, is not about meeting ideals, but about presence, being fully here, fully alive, and fully engaged with the miraculous life my body can create and sustain. In embracing this truth, I write a new story of myself, one where fear and shame are chapters of the past, where resilience and tenderness coexist, and where my body, small breasts, soft curves, and all, is recognized not for its imperfections, but for its power, its intelligence, and its ability to carry me forward into a life that is wholly my own. For as long as I can remember, I defined myself by what I lacked. I measured my worth in the size and shape of my breasts, in the firmness of my curves, in the softness of my skin, and in the imagined ideal body that I had never owned. I compared myself endlessly, envied effortlessly, and punished my body with my thoughts. Pregnancy shattered some of these illusions in the harshest and most intimate way. It forced me to confront my body, not as a canvas for perfection, but as a vessel for creation. At first, this confrontation felt unbearable. Every change felt like a betrayal. My breasts, small and uneven, swelled and ached, and I imagined them as proof of failure rather than proof of life. My belly grew, my skin stretched, and I felt as though I were wearing a body that belonged to someone else. Self-consciousness became a constant companion, whispering that I was unworthy, flawed, inadequate. And yet, beneath the fear, beneath the shame, a quiet truth began to stir. My body was performing something extraordinary, something I had long taken for granted. Reclaiming myself in this moment required gentleness, patience, and a willingness to listen. I began to speak to my body differently, softly, tentatively, offering words of gratitude where before there had been only criticism. I touched my breasts with reverence instead of judgment, feeling their responsiveness, their adaptability, their intelligence. I traced the curve of my belly with wonder, acknowledging the life within me and the strength my body carried. In these small acts, I began to rewrite the story I had long told myself, that my worth depended on perfection, into a story of presence, resilience, and awe. I began to see that motherhood does not demand perfection, it demands presence. To carry life, to nurture, to be attentive to the tiny, unfolding existence within me required nothing more than my willingness to inhabit my body fully, tenderly, courageously. Every stretch mark, every swell, every curve became a symbol not of failure, but of survival and creation. My softness became a testament to adaptability, my vulnerability a source of courage, and my breasts, once objects of shame, proof of life's quiet intelligence. Womanhood, I realized, is not about the absence of fear or insecurity. It is about how we navigate them. It is about finding strength in fragility, confidence in vulnerability, and pride in imperfection. My breasts, my soft curves, my tender belly, these are not limitations. They are evidence of resilience, of adaptability, of power. And in embracing them, I am beginning to inhabit a body that is wholly my own, free from the relentless standards of others or the cruel expectations I once placed upon myself. This journey from fragile to fierce is neither clean nor linear. I still catch glimpses of insecurity in the mirror. I still worry about my breasts, my curves, my softness. But these moments are now tempered with awareness and compassion. I have learned to hold them gently, to acknowledge them without surrendering to fear. Each day, I claim more of myself, speak more kindly to my body, and recognize the beauty inherent in survival, growth, and creation. In this new story of womanhood, I am becoming present in my body, present in my life, present in the life I carry within me. I am learning to see motherhood not as a test of perfection, but as a testament to resilience.
I am learning to see my body not as a battlefield of flaws and shame, but as a vessel of power, intelligence, and transformation. I am learning, finally, that my worth does not depend on what I look like. It depends on my capacity to inhabit myself fully, tenderly, and with courage. And so, the fragile girl who once flinched at her own reflection is slowly stepping into something new. She is learning to meet her gaze with curiosity, tenderness, and awe. She is discovering that softness can coexist with strength, that vulnerability can coexist with courage, and that life can be carried with dignity, even in a body she once scorned. Her breasts, her curves, her imperfections, they are no. There is a silence that comes at the end of a long day, the quiet that follows fear, the stillness after tears. It is in this space that I finally allow myself to speak, to whisper truths I have hidden even from myself for years. My body, once a source of relentless judgment and private shame, is learning to hear my voice not as critique, but as comfort. My body is not too small for love, I whisper, softly at first, almost afraid to speak it aloud. My breasts, the ones I have long believed too small, too uneven, too unworthy, seem to shift beneath my fingers, as though listening, as though understanding. For so long, I have equated size with desirability, curves with worth, perfection with love. But I am beginning to learn that love does not measure, does not weigh, does not judge. My body, with all its soft folds and tender swellings, is entirely capable of being loved, by others, yes, but most importantly, by me. My body is not too weak for life, I murmur next, feeling the pulse of life beneath my skin, the subtle movements of growth and adaptation that I could once only fear. My chest aches, my belly stretches, my breasts swell and shift, and I remember the countless hours I spent fearing fragility, imagining collapse, imagining failure. But my body endures, it adapts, it nurtures, it carries more than I ever believed it could. The small, sensitive breasts I once despised are not betrayals. They are vessels of resilience, responding to the demands of life with quiet, persistent intelligence. And finally, I whisper the words that feel almost impossible, yet necessary. My body knows how to hold more than fear. I think of the nights I spent awake, staring at the curve of my chest, imagining inadequacy, imagining ridicule. I think of every touch I flinched from, every glance I avoided, every reflection that felt like a verdict. And I realize my body has carried all of this, my fear, my grief, my longing, and it still stands, it still adapts, it still gives. It still nurtures. My body is not fragile. It is not a failure. It is capable of tenderness, courage, resilience, and love, far more than fear could ever claim. These whispers are not declarations of triumph. They are fragile, trembling, intimate acknowledgments, spoken in the quiet when no one else is listening. They are truths that my insecurity once silenced, truths that my shame once dismissed, truths that my fear once mocked. And yet, here they are, alive, persistent, real. My body, small breasts, soft curves, tender, imperfect, is enough. It is capable. It is alive. It is deserving. In this closing whisper, I give myself permission to stay in my body fully, without judgment, without comparison, without the need for perfection. I allow my hands to rest gently on my chest, to feel the rhythm of life and adaptation. I allow my eyes to trace the curves I once avoided, to see resilience instead of flaw,
to see the capacity for nurturing, for love, for endurance. And as I exhale, I feel the fear loosen its grip, just a little. My body, once a battlefield of doubt, becomes a sanctuary of possibility. My breasts, my belly, my softness, they are not failures. They are instruments of life, proof of resilience, and companions in the journey of becoming. I whisper again, this time with a little more certainty. My body is not too small for love. My body is not too weak for life. My body knows how to hold more than fear. And in this whisper, fragile yet unwavering, I find a quiet revolution, the beginning of acceptance, the first spark of courage, the tender acknowledgement that my body, every curve, every swell, every imperfection is enough, more than enough. The room is quiet. The world outside has faded into muted shadows, leaving only the soft rhythm of my breath and the subtle pulse of life within me. It is here, in this sacred stillness, that I allow myself to speak truths I have kept buried for decades, truths that insecurity, fear, and shame have tried to silence. My body, once a relentless judgment, is finally listening, not as an adversary, but as a companion, as a vessel that has carried me through grief, fear, and transformation. I press my hands to my chest and whisper, softly, almost shyly, my body is not too small for love. For so long, I measured my worth by my breasts, their size, their symmetry, their perceived appeal, and found myself wanting. I believed that love was conditional, that desire hinged on perfection, that smallness was synonymous with inadequacy. But now I feel the truth beneath my fingertips. Love is not measured by size, nor dictated by shape. My body, small breasts, soft curves, tender imperfections, is fully capable of being loved. It has always been capable, even when my mind refused to see it. I let the whisper linger, feeling it sink into my chest, into the spaces of self-doubt I have long inhabited. Then I continue, softer, more deliberate. My body is not too weak for life. I think of the nights I feared fragility, imagined collapse, imagined betrayal by the very vessel that now nurtures life within me. I feel the stretch of skin, the pulse of growth, the warmth of my swelling breasts, and I realize my body endures, it adapts, it carries life and possibility, resilience and love. The smallness I once scorned is not failure, it is strength in quiet, living form. My body is not weak, it has never been weak. And finally, I whisper the words that feel revolutionary, almost dangerous in their intimacy. My body knows how to hold more than fear. I remember the years I spent flinching from my reflection, avoiding intimacy, hiding in shame. I remember the quiet grief over the body I thought I should have had, the relentless self-blame, the moments of comparing myself to imagined ideals. And yet, here I am. My body has carried all of it, my doubt, my sorrow, my longing, and it continues to thrive, to adapt, to nurture, to endure. My body holds life, possibility, and strength, more than fear, always more than fear. I trace the curve of my breasts, tender and alive beneath my touch, and I feel gratitude mixed with awe. These small, uneven, sensitive parts of me, once my greatest source of shame, are capable of sustaining life, of responding with intelligence and purpose. My belly, swelling and stretching, is a living testament to endurance. My softness is not weakness. My vulnerability is not failure. My body is a miracle disguised in the ordinary, and for the first time I am willing to see it. The whispers grow steadier, more confident. I speak to myself as I would to a child, or a friend, or the life growing inside me. You are enough.
You are alive. You are capable. You are deserving of love and tenderness from others and from yourself. You are stronger than you know, braver than you imagine, and more resilient than you have ever allowed yourself to believe. I close my eyes and let the words wash over me. Let them settle into the corners of my mind that have long believed only criticism and fear. I breathe in the quiet, breathe out the self-doubt. I allow myself to linger here, in tenderness, in awe, in recognition. My body is not perfect. It is not flawless. It is soft where I once wanted hard, imperfect where I once wanted ideal, and yet in its imperfection I find beauty, courage, and life. And so I whisper again, this time with a steady certainty. My body is not too small for love. My body is not too weak for life. My body knows how to hold more than fear. And in this whisper, fragile yet unwavering, I find a quiet revolution, the beginning of acceptance, the first spark of courage, the tender acknowledgement that my body, every curve, every swell, every imperfection, is enough, more than enough, always enough.
Thank you for